Hello, one. Hello, all, to this very monumental, this very special occasion, this very special bonfire. As you can hear, it's Alan the Pole with the goal. John's not able to join with us, but I still have two of the best in the business, as he would say, joined with us today, Tim and Alex as well. So why don't you guys go around the horn? How are we feeling? I know we did a little special live stream sort of episode, in the moment, but we were able to sleep it off. It's been close to, I guess, 20 something hours after the game. How are we feeling, gentlemen?
Did not seem like I got enough sleep, but hey, that's life. Also, I learned that on our streaming platform, the videos are not like the same direction for everyone, because Alan, you totally pointed at me when you said you were pointing at Alex, and I was all confused for a second. I'm like, you just did that, man.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're good.
Yeah.
I'm with you now.
Swinging.
And I'm feeling great. Thanks for having me. Always happy to be on the show whenever I'm called upon. And it was a great game to watch from afar, and excited to cover some playoff games soon.
I know. So we can go right into the news, which is, the Fire are officially going back to the playoffs for the first time since 2017. They currently, as of recording, are sitting in 8th in the Eastern Conference on 51 points, 1 point ahead of the Columbus Crew, and would host a play-in game. Now, I know technically some people are like, oh, this is a play-in game, but the way the MLS playoffs are structured, it's technically playoffs.
It's postseason.
Still,
it's postseason any way you put it. It's postseason, which is where the Fire have not been, and they have made it.
Exactly. Potato. It's postseason.
And 51 points, right? Like, that's the other thing. Like, this is not a team sneaking in. Like, some years the line has been as low as like 41, 42 points. The Fire 51 points, which in basically, I believe, any season, the only season that was the line was 2016, I want to say. And so it's a playoff team in a year in any format that MLS has had, basically.
Like 45, 48 is usually the bar you're aiming for to make the playoffs. So the fact that 51 is what they need this time, it's pretty high. It just shows how competitive the top half of the Eastern Conference is this year.
Yeah, we've been saying it for a while that the Eastern Conference is probably the stronger conference between the East and the West. But, what a turnaround, essentially, in the few years that Joe Mansueto has been owner, and then in the year that Greg Berhalter has been not only head coach, but also director of football or general manager, however you want to call it. So, there's definitely something to celebrate. Unfortunately, though, there was a little bit of salt into our celebration soup, and that is Andre Franco is likely out for a little bit for an extended time. We don't know how long. He had to be subbed out, and there is a little bit of fear that it's an ACL injury. Do we have any more updates?
We will get one tomorrow.
I'm
going to training, and then Alex and I will be in a press conference. It did not look good. Greg actually used the words thoughts and prayers to Andre and his family, which is not what you want to be hearing about a guy, pretty much ever in any situation. But there have certainly been cases in the past where these things are not as bad as they look, and that's what we hope is the case for him.
Yeah, and it really sucks for a guy who, this was really a player who was either going to boom or was going to bust, and he has really been booming. He hit the ground running, exceeded, I think, everybody's expectations, and was one of the best players in MLS in the month of September. So really sad for him to see this injury. Hopefully it's not too bad, but that field in Miami after some rain last week didn't help at all. And he knew it the moment he went down that it was something serious. And we should find out soon. They were doing medical examinations today, so more information should be available tomorrow.
So, Alex, let me ask this to you, because I think one thing that's relevant, he's not here permanently. He's here on a loan. There are certainly clubs out there that this would mean that they were going back. I think that the assumption that I had based on the way that he had been playing is that he was an obvious pickup, especially, on a non-DP contract. And my gut feeling is that him being injured, even if he's out for a significant portion of his season, it almost makes it more likely the Fire would want to keep him so that he comes back here and gets the opportunity to play here. Just knowing some people around the club. I don't know what your thoughts or your gut feeling is on this.
Yeah, the impression I've gotten is that especially after how well he's played in September that he's going to come back and that there's not really a question about it. This might complicate things a little bit if we find out that he's not going to be available until June or July. You never know. But we'll find out. I would still trend toward he's going to join permanently just because of how good he's been. And this is probably a DP level player on about 20 of 30 MLS teams. So the fact that they have him on a TAM deal is quite good. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's a decision that won't be made until December fully. And maybe we'll see how the beginning of the transfer market shapes out too.
Yeah, and again, something that the comparison, and we don't know how severe the injury is, and again, we hope that it's significantly more minor. But when a coach is bringing this up unprompted in a press conference, right, like that says something. I think the comparison that everyone around the league is going to want to make is Ricky Puig, who we still haven't seen this year appear for the LA Galaxy after getting injured in the playoffs last year. And there was a big question because the Galaxy were hard against the salary cap all season, and the question was, does he? Like, why don't the Galaxy just use the season-ending injury tag on him, which would allow the Galaxy to replace him with another DP, essentially? And I think the difference here is that because it's an option, you can talk to Franco and say, look, we know there's a chance you could be recovered by some date in the MLS season that's further along, but we need to be able to replace you just for this 1 year, and so we have to make alternate plans. And if we pick you up, that's the plan, and are you okay with it? Because I think the concern with Ricky Puig was, you didn't want the guy to feel like he wasn't welcome in a central part of the plans, and that maybe replacing him even on a temporary basis could do that.
Right. So, thought, as Greg said, thoughts and prayers go out to Andre. Definitely someone who has showed up and hit the ground running for the team. And I mean, again, like Alex said, the fact that he's a TAM player. And, the fact that he came here because he knew what project was being built. I mean, just, all the glory to him. But let's talk a little bit about that Miami game, about the clincher, about how the Fire have clinched the postseason at Miami on a Tuesday evening, an incredibly weird circumstance. So, the game starts off, fairly, I would say, in the Fire's way. They had a few shots that go right at the keeper, and it wasn't until it was the 11th minute officially off of a corner, off of a set piece, where Davila, assisted by Marin Haile-Selassie, used his head to score the first goal to break the deadlock. I mean, that's something that I am absolutely loving about this new Fire, about this new formation that Greg has got going for us. The fact that the Fire are just striking early, and they kept going on early. 31st minute, you have Jonathan Dean, assisted by Kwame, adds the second, beating Ustari 1v1. And Miami, unfortunately, did pull one back in the 39th minute after a little bit of a scramble in front of the net. But Kwame, thanks again to Marin Haile-Selassie, another assist, he extended the lead back to 2. That's when Suarez, a little bit later on in the second half, in the 57th and the 74th minute, he made a brace. He essentially kind of single-handedly did a lot of damage. I'm pretty sure a lot of Fire supporters were like, well, there goes the clincher. I guess we're going to have to do it on Saturday at Soldier Field. But that's when Justin Reynolds was like, nah, I got this. And with some help from the front line, from Maurizio Pineda, 80th minute, Fire score again. And then a few minutes later, Tyler Terrence, probably the best commentator in the game, was like, is there going to be an eighth? Brian Gutierrez heard that, and he's like, oh, absolutely, and scores a missile, an absolute golazo into the top right corner to seal the deal, to seal Miami's fate for taking the L, and to seal the Fire into the postseason. So, just really quickly, again, how are we feeling about that result after that 8-goal fest that we saw on a Tuesday evening?
I mean, I think there's no other way. You have to be incredibly happy with the result, right? Like, there's things you could pick apart. I'm sure that there are things that Greg and his coaching staff have looked at video for and are going to discuss. But like, at the end of the day, like, you kept Messi off of the score sheet. You scored 5 goals on them. Now, they are a team that gives up a bunch of goals, but you only conceded 3. And like, you just have to be pretty happy with that. and for the Fire to clinch in Miami with their star-studded lineup and more or less take them out of contention for the Supporters Shield, I think is just like an extra layer of sweetness on top.
Yeah, Miami played really, really poorly in this game for the most part. Messi had 11 shots and 9 of them were off target. He was pretty awful in front of goal. With that being said, when you look at that star power and you look at the fact that this is MLS, any win against this team is huge, especially on the road. And to get 5 goals against them is even more impressive. And to get those goals from very, very unlikely sources with a very bizarre, unexpected lineup is just unbelievable. And I think it just says a lot about this team under Berhalter, about the players' flexibility, about the depth of this team. And it's one of the most impressive results I've seen this season.
So that's a really good point about the lineup, right? Because when we saw the starting 11 just as like a list of guys, I think we all assumed that it was going to be back to the 4-3-3, right? Like if I were playing 2 natural center backs, and it just fit a 4-3-3 perfectly. Surprises were there still. Kwame getting his first start, Marin getting his first start in a few months. No Brian Gutierrez in the starting 11. No Philip Zinkernagel in the starting 11. So there were surprises, but it just fit a 4-3-3. And that's not how it played. All of a sudden, Andrew Gutman was asked to be a center back, and he kind of made it work. We saw Dean and Marin playing as essentially like wing backs. So Marin was out of position, and yet that was the formation that ended up getting the victory.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of things that we've seen in little bits and pieces this season that were all put together all at once. Gutman has played at left center back for a couple minutes, a couple times this season in really unique situations, but he was never asked to do it from the start, really. And then Marin Haile Selassie played at left back against the New York Red Bulls in April. Didn't go very well, and we never saw him there again. Romani Kwame playing right wing is not something I ever would have imagined, considering that he's played 1 minute since mid-July. But it worked, and he was amazing in the 45 minutes that he was able to play because he's still not 100% fit. So just the fact that all these things combined and it worked is astonishing. And I think Mascherano was off guard by it too.
To say nothing of the guys off the bench, right? Like we hadn't seen Justin Reynolds on the pitch at all in ages. And
since that same Red Bull game, April 5th. Yeah. So like real shades of that game.
Like I had thought he was going to end the season with 105 minutes, and that was going to be that. I mean, in a way that would still be progress for him, right? Like we saw what happened with Sergio Orahel, where he had a slight opportunity, and then all of a sudden the floodgates burst open this season. Was not expecting him to look as decent in that right back spot as he eventually did, coming in for Dean, who was injured. He wasn't perfect, but he scored an absolutely beautiful goal off of a an absolutely perfect pass from Mauricio Pineda. So that's 2 Fire homegrowns connecting, and that's the game winner. That's what sent the Fire into the postseason.
Because Guti set that goal up before.
That was that triple sub that we saw that had the 3 Fire homegrown players of Justin Reynolds, Mauricio Pineda, Brian Gutierrez, and all of them coming out to contribute towards goals and assists. I mean, so much just went right. Now, of course, as mentioned, Luis Suarez did kind of, he single-handedly almost caused a little bit of damage, but the Fire came back. They lost a 2-goal lead. It's happened before, and a lot of us were like, this is it going to slip away from us? But they came back. So my question is this sort of this curse of the Fire, coming back, is the curse really broken? And what does it possibly mean for playoff confidence, essentially?
I think it does a ton for playoff confidence, right? Because you just have to get wins. It doesn't matter if they're pretty wins. It doesn't matter if they're bad wins. We've seen the Fire win a couple ugly games this season, right? But what we hadn't seen is the Fire win an ugly game against a good team. And Miami clearly have flaws, but they were in contention for the Supporters Shield going into this match, right? They're still mathematically are. Realistically, they're not. And they're a good team. And you're going to need ugly wins against good teams. And this wasn't the ugliest win by any stretch of the imaginations, but it didn't go the way that Greg Berhalter and his staff, drew up, the way that they would have wanted it to go. And the team still came out with 3 points. And that's what really matters here.
At the same time, I think when you look at the way they set the lineup up, the way they did that 5-2-3, and the players the personnel they put in, the way that the goals were executed, and the way the game just kind of evolved in the first half. I think the first half went exactly how they drew it up. And in the second half, they adapted, and they adapted very, very well to a really weird situation. I mean, I want to take a second to talk about Justin Reynolds again, because this is a guy who started the season with some momentum from 2024, started the season really, really poorly. And he finally got a start against the Red Bulls and was pulled off before the hour mark for Omari Glasgow at right back. And he was never seen again in the first team. And there were talks of his future. There were talks of, is he going to finish the season in Chicago? Is he a guy on the trade market? He's playing for the second team every week, out of position as a left back. And he plays so well with the second team that he works his way back in, gets his opportunity, and he takes it. And I think that's just unbelievable mentality from him, who's a really, really talented player, and finally got the opportunity and seized it. And I think that's going to help the team a lot, having another guy at right back, especially when both the guys ahead of him potentially have an injury concern.
Yeah. And I mean, look, Berhalter shouted him out afterwards about how he's one of the guys, and Marin highlights the last day too, that kept their attitudes up and kept on working in training, even though they weren't really getting the minutes. And like both of them were fantastic in this one. We said in our 5 things that came out on Sunday that Marin was like the Fire's one attacking option off the bench. But this team was up, like scored 3 goals against Miami with a lot of those attacking options, like Brian Gutierrez, like Philip Zinkernagel on the bench, which just says something about the depth that it suddenly feels like the Fire have. And like, this went from a team where if you're a playoff team, you felt pretty confident in a game against the Fire, which is important in the playoffs, right? Because everyone's a playoff team. And now the past 3 games combined where the Fire have won, 2 of them with clean sheets, and then this one where they won by like any means necessary with players you didn't expect. I think suddenly if you're a playoff team, you're looking at the Fire as a much more difficult opponent. And I think that's exactly what Greg Berhalter and his staff want.
And all credit, I think, or a huge amount of the credit has to be given to Greg. I mean, he kind of he changed the mentality of the team from a team that, they lost the 2-goal lead. So a lot of people, including myself, were like, it looks like the game's gone. But, they fought back, and we've seen, like you mentioned, players that, don't score that often, players that don't feature that often, and players that usually they don't put in, or they haven't been putting in that much effort, all of a sudden be like, no, we've got this in the bag. And especially Justin Reynolds' goal, where in a situation, the Fire presses forward, they move forward, and they're looking for that goal. There were 5 guys in those blue away jerseys as the ball is being moved around. And when Mauricio Pineda was up to the left, I saw there were 3-4 other players, and I was like, oh, this is absolutely a goal because first of all, Miami were just tired at that point, and it's a complete mentality change in my opinion. So I mean, again, even with just one, like you mentioned, we only had Marin Haile Selassie as the only quote-unquote attacking option. Everyone's an attacking option, because I'm pretty sure, apart from like center back, technically someone from almost every single position scored, whether it was, it was a defense, midfield, off the bench, on the field. So yeah, I mean, yeah. You mentioned, the team came from back-to-back clean sheets against Minnesota and against Columbus. We weren't able to keep that clean sheet. But at the same time, it just feels like we're doing better, especially defensively. So, specifically after this game, do we feel maybe a bit better or a bit worse about the overall defensive structure after these past 3 weeks? Or 3 wins.
Look, you look at the score sheet, Lionel Messi doesn't appear, right? I think you have to feel okay about that. The woodwork did kind of give a little help to the Fire in this one, but
it's got its own.
It does. I mean, look, that happens in some games, right? I mean, I forget which goalie, but somebody was quoted like years and years ago being like, "What, you want me to stop the ones that are going out now too?" When like there were like 4 shots off the post. But look, you have to feel better about it. Was it perfect? No, but I mean, again, you can concede goals as long as you score more, and it still counts as a win.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think the back 3 has brought a level of stability that this team did not have for the first 2/3 of the season. And Honestly, I think it's something we're going to see a lot of going forward. I think it was a matchup thing the first game against Minnesota, but I think it's here to stay because it has worked so well, even against teams that play a back four, because this was a 4-4-2 in Miami. And, especially with Marin being the left wing back, that's a whole other dimension that honestly was a complete game changer in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, just about the mind games, one more thing, and then I think maybe we can move on. Now you see a Fire lineup, and it's a lot harder to know who's playing where and how you defend against them. And if you're supposed to be man marking, is there a guy that's assigned to someone that's supposed to be playing that you think is going to be a winger, but it turns out they're a wing back, and then they're marking the complete wrong man on a certain like set pieces or other plays? It just complicates things so much if you're an opposing team.
And I mean, I think if you're going into playoffs and the other team has absolutely no idea what your 11 is going to be or how they're going to shape up or how they're going to press, that is something that is a whole other dimension, especially when there's a possibility that you're going to play the same team 3 times in 12 days. And if they're going to be facing a completely different lineup or personnel or whatnot, or, pressing cues, everything, set pieces, like that's so much harder to prepare for, and it gives you an upper hand that most teams in this league do not have, and that the Fire did not have for the first 2/3 of the season when the lineups were very predictable because it was basically the same midfield 3 every week, same front 3 every week, maybe 1 or 2 changes at center back because the center backs kept getting injured. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one last thing, I guess, before we go on to the preview of the game, the final game happening at Soldier Field. Who was your MOTM? Who was your man of the match?
I have to say Marin Hayasselase, just him coming in after having been denied an opportunity for so long, and having such an imprint on the game, really helping to set the tone, getting 2 assists. Like, that's exactly the kind of performance that you need.
Yeah, I agree with on that take with Marin. I think he's obviously the man of the match. Just sheer production alone went a long way with that. And he really is someone who can play the wingback role. He just doesn't really, it's not his favorite. And, he's really the only winger on the bench. So that's where mostly we've seen him. He's been really
and we saw his motor too. Just, that's the other side of it. Like, just him going 90 minutes and being as energetic as he was for so much of it is hard to do.
I mean, the fact that a player of his quality only has 4 starts this season, I mean, it's a testament to Bamba and Zinkernagel, but it's honestly pretty shocking because he's become a very underrated player, a very underrated dimension that this team has. But I also want to say Kouame, because the way that he started this game out of nowhere for the first time in more than 2 months, and plays a position that we really never had any expectation we would see him play there. And the way he did it was like so perfect for the matchup. And he gave every single drop he had because he knew he could only play 45 minutes. Berhalter took that risk anyway, and it worked perfectly. And he was involved in a couple of goals there. He set up Jonathan Dean with a ridiculous through ball, and then, scores that goal himself that I could not have dreamed when I woke up in the morning that Kouame would be on the field, let alone starting, let alone scoring a goal to put the Fire up 2 goals right before halftime.
And looking so energetic throughout it, right? Like, that gets at an attitude thing that I think we haven't seen from previous Fire teams from anyone. And now we're getting guys that haven't really had the opportunity showing it, which is in a really crucial matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Romy, he is probably going back to Cadiz at the end of the season. The expectation there is that he's going to be coming back to Spain at the end of the season, that his loan option is not going to be picked up. That could change, but that was their expectation over at Cadiz. He could have easily just put up, he was injured, take a step back. I know I'm not going to be here forever. This has happened at his clubs in the past. But no, he came in, he worked hard to get back to fitness, came into this game and, played incredibly and was one of the most important players in the first half and giving the team the lead that they could build off of in the second 45.
Yep.
Yeah, sweet. All right, gentlemen, I think it's time to go up a bit north from Fort Lauderdale back to
civilization,
Soldier Field, back to civilization. Yes, back to the Windy City, the best city, to preview the Fire's final regular season home game. The last time, because there is still a possibility that Soldier Field could, or actually technically it wouldn't be Soldier Field, most likely be SeatGeek, but that, let's say that Chicago could see some playoff soccer at home. The last time the Fire have taken on the men up from the north was March 15th, all the way back near the beginning of the season, which was a 2-1 victory at Toronto. We saw goals from Kerr to start off Toronto, but then Gutman and Kuipers to bring it back. Kuipers could have had another one, but VAR did call it off all sides. Now, we do have some old friends in new places. Of course, Chicago hometown boy, Georgi Mihailovic. He features as a DP for Toronto after the recent summer transfer. And Alex, you did mention that ever since Georgie joined Toronto as a DP, he's played for, I believe, 7 games.
Undefeated.
And they are on a 7...
Undefeated.
They are on a 7-game undefeated streak.
They're also on a 7-game win.
7 games undefeated. Yes.
Glass half full,
so 7
Alex.
games undefeated.
Glass half full.
Asterisks. Yeah. 7 game undefeated, asterisk winless as well. So, I mean, the first question that I want to go ahead and pose is this. The Fire, they played a game last Saturday. They played a game on Tuesday. They're about to play again. So 3 games in 1 week. Do the Fire go all for it? Or do we let guys get some rest? Because, I mean, some players that played for a majority of the game or all the game, like Waterman, Elliott, Gutman, Hugo, they clearly were gassed. I mean, honestly, I was at first, like, when I saw the celebrations on the field, I was like, it's a bit lackluster for a team that just broke a huge playoff streak. But then I was like, oh yeah, they just played a few days ago and they're playing in muggy Fort
because they're
Lauderdale,
all about to die. That's why they were acting like that.
Because they're all about to leave this plane of existence. So I guess my question for y'all is, does the Fire push for another win? Because, we don't have to finish 9th. We don't have to, settle for an away play in, but we can go for possibly even hosting, or even better if Lady Luck has it, we could potentially just go straight to the first round. But, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the Fire should really prioritize giving the main guys, the starters, a rest before an off week? Or do we gun it?
I mean, look, I think
win?
that's what Greg already kind of did, right? Like, that's why we saw Zinkernagel coming on in this, second half sub. That's why we saw Brian Gutierrez kind of rested as much, or one of the reasons that we saw him rested as much. I think that there are guys that are really rested. I think that maybe you do a little bit of rotation because that's inevitable. And you mentioned Hugo Kuipers. I mean, he is the guy that was doing absolute yeoman's work. Like, he didn't get a goal in that one, but he worked incredibly hard. Like, there were points where he could barely walk, and then the ball would come near him, or something would happen. He would need to press. He would need to do hold up play, and he somehow found the energy to run. And then you see him looking like he could just literally fall on the ground and not be able to get up for 2 days. So, I mean, that looks like a guy that has certainly earned a rest. Tom Barlow does have a hat trick on the season, so hey. But I think that, Greg is, I think that Greg has done this enough to know that teams that back it into the playoffs end up not really pulling forward in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Waterman, Elliott, Gutman. That was the Fire's 3 center backs from the last game. So I could see maybe Waterman rotating for Rogers, simply because Waterman is going to go play for Canada. The other 2 are going to have the week off. And then Hugo, he was so beyond finished by the final whistle that I would not be shocked if Tom Barlow does get a nod here. But look, if you win both your games and you're the Chicago Fire, you have 2 more games against teams you should beat. You win both, there's a 95% chance that you avoid the wild card. That is something you really, really, really want if you're the Chicago Fire. It would take a host of other results elsewhere that are kind of unlikely to all happen for you to not finish 7th or higher if you win both your games. So they're going to have to go for it. Just because you're in the playoffs, there's no reason not to go for it. If you win both games, there's like a 7-8% chance that you get home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. And if that's even a slim possibility, you have to go for it.
this is Major League Soccer we're talking about. A slim possibility is just a possibility.
Yeah, the most unlikely things can and do happen in this league. I mean, look, it's not mathematically impossible for the Fire to finish as high as third. It would require Orlando, Nashville, Charlotte, NYCFC, and Inter Miami to collapse.
But look, if you win both your games, there is, I mean, I'm going to do very quick math in my head, but I think it's like an 88% chance that you're going to finish 5th, 6th, or 7th, which are all a decent position to be in, because then you're guaranteed game 2 at home. You're avoiding the wild card. You don't have to worry about playing on a Wednesday. And, it's a pretty good position to be in.
And like, you potentially avoid a team that you really don't want to be facing in the first round, given like that the team struggled against FC Cincinnati, but there's going to be like a lot of movement happening there too. I think the other thing is like, I know the Crew have had bad form. A lot of it has been injury related. Some guys are maybe closer to coming back than I had thought. They are 1 point behind the Chicago Fire. Both teams have played 32 games. You're in the playoffs and you know that, but you would rather get in on your terms, even if it is going to be the wild card. So I'd expect that the Crew are going to be chasing as hard as they can. And so you can't let your foot off the gas pedal, right? Like, you don't want to go into the playoffs with guys feeling like they had just let off the gas.
Let's put it this way. The Fire should absolutely be very, very upset with themselves if they finish any lower than 8th at this point. If they're playing a road wildcard game, like, it's still quite possible at this point if they lose both their games, especially. But that's really, really the goal, is to avoid that at this point. 8th, 7th, 6th, whatever, that's where you want to be. And if you go crazy and you get incredibly lucky and finish 4th, then you're in dreamland. But it's very unlikely right now, and it would require a lot to happen. So I think right now, if you win your games, you win both of them, both winnable games, 6th or 7th is very much within the realm of possibility.
And Greg has said all year, he's actually like almost been like, Tim, come on, I keep on telling you this, but like, look, I need to have the quote, like that's part of what you're doing in press conferences, that the team takes it one game at a time. They're not focused on the standings as much, although Greg has said that they don't look at the standings and then quotes standings to you. And then in the press conference
right after the game, he says, "Oh yeah, Red Bull lost, guys."
Yeah. He'll start like being like, yeah, like they're here, we're here. And you're like, okay. So you just magically know the standings because of some brain chip you've got or something. You don't look at them. It's infused into you. But still, I think that he is being honest when he says the team's approach is to take it one game at a time. And like, this is the team in front of you. I think it's going to be a difficult opponent. Like, they haven't conceded more than 1 goal in 7 games. That's tough. Robin Fraser has, showing what he can do as a coach. Another familiar face, just to throw it out there, Sean Johnson, Milkman, in net, was the best player for Toronto against Inter Miami. He is having one of those like weird career years that some goalies have when you think, oh, are they close to retiring? And then all of a sudden they hit a level that you hadn't seen from them in years. So it's not going to be a walk in the park. Like, looking at where Toronto is in the standings is really misleading, because that team ripped out a lot of dead weight over the summer and put in Georgi Mihailovic.
I mean, I think Toronto are going to be a very, very real threat in the Eastern Conference next season. They're going to be very good next year. And it was always building for next year. They were out of the race really in like June this year. But
this is why you shouldn't smoke, kids. If your DPs are smoking, you end up out of the playoffs really early.
Yeah. Well, look, this is going to be a really good team next year, and they're playing like it's next year. They're not throwing this season away and waiting for next year. They're gonna go for it in this game, even though they have technically nothing to play for. So this isn't a walk in the park, but still a game the Fire should win.
And they believe, right? Like, they clearly believe in Robin Fraser's system. I think that they pulled out, like when I said dead weight, I mean, there were, bad presences in the locker room that are no longer there. And it's pretty clear everyone has rallied behind the people that are there now.
Yeah. But I want to give, how people have rallied behind Fraser. People clearly, as we've seen in the last few games, and as we've definitely seen against Miami, people have definitely bought into Berhalter's system. And as we saw with the players who came off the bench, the players that started, even those who haven't started for literal months, the type of workload that they can pull. I mean, this is Major League Soccer we're talking about. Anything is quite literally possible. One other thing that I wanted to add, we mentioned earlier in the podcast that Andre Franco has gone down. He probably, honestly, most likely won't feature for the game against Toronto. So out of, let's say, three possibilities. So Kwame, Guti, and Acosta. Kwame, we've mentioned, he's played very well in his return to action. Guti basically excelled off the bench, scoring as well. And then Acosta played well as well for the limited minutes that he had. If you guys were in charge, which of those three would you put in that sort of Franco midfield
I feel like
position?
we've got the same answer. It's not really, it wouldn't be the same position with those three guys, right? But I mean, I feel like I'm pretty comfortable saying that we're all going to say Guti, right? And some of it's practical. We haven't seen Kellen Acosta go anything close to 90 since DC United may have been the last time he came off in like the 89th minute. He played 90. You know what? No, yeah, both games against DC he went the full 90. So that was June. It hasn't happened often. Kwame, as Alex was just saying, not 90 minutes fit, and you need a guy that can be there and be a difference maker for 90 minutes. Brian Gutierrez is the guy. I think I also said like he's been out of the starting 11. The chances are incredibly good that he starts in this one because of the rotation that's happened, because of Franco likely being absent, and he now knows exactly what the line is to be a starting player on this squad with the number 10, the way that Franco is playing it. And his opportunity is to show that he can do that in the next few games or however long Franco is out, to make the case that the team doesn't have to replace someone in that position, that he can do the work.
I'm actually going to disagree on it being Guti as the automatic replacement for Franco. I think if you're going to stick with the 5-2-3, there's no way Guti could play the same role right now that Franco could. I mean, he could in the future. I just think it would be a big risk to put him in starting in the Franco role, even though he does have a similar skill set in some ways. I think for me, it would be Kellen Acosta if you're going to stick with that shape. And maybe for people who have listened to this pod when I've been on, it's not a surprise to hear me say Kellen Acosta, but I think he's played pretty well when he's gotten minutes, even though it's been rare lately. And he's had several moments in his career where people have completely written him off at the club and international level, where it seemed like he was never going to get back to the level he was before. And I still think he has that in him to get back to the level he was at in 2021. Maybe I'm being delusional because he's a player I've always liked. But again, I think this is a game that he can come in, he can play well. And if you're not going to have Franco and you want to have a guy in the midfield who can, have that passing range, but also be a defensive presence out of possession, I think Kellen can be that guy, and he can step up in big games. He's been a big game player in the past. So I think if you're going into the playoffs with Acosta as a guy who can start, and Guti as a guy who maybe he goes into the role Kwame was playing in the last game on the right side, and maybe Bamba rotates out. I don't know. But or Guti comes off the bench again, because he's honestly had some of his best moments off the bench this year as well. So we'll see what happens. But if you do want Guti to play the Franco role, I think it'll take a bit more time. And maybe this is a game you just experiment with it, but we'll see.
That's the other thing, right? Like Kellen Acosta, like Georgia Mihailovic, one thing is he can be a very frustrating player to play against. Mm-hmm. And the Fire don't have a lot of guys that really have that description. Kellen Acosta can be an incredibly frustrating player to play against.
I think Kellen would know how to defend Georgie pretty well too, just because those two have played together a lot. They've spent several weeks together in several different camps before, even though they've never been on the same club team. They've played together a lot, and they've been in training together a lot. So I think if anybody knows how to defend Georgie on this roster, it would be Kellen Acosta.
And I can totally see those two, just knowing the personalities, where as soon as the final whistle blows, they're great friends, but for 90 minutes, just trying to drive the hell out of each other. So yeah, I mean, that could be a really key matchup. And I mean, you're right about the number of times that he's been written off. And Greg was sort of doing it. I think that may have been him trying to communicate through the media, but I was asking about his play in some games where I thought he had good appearances off the bench, and Greg almost was like, well, game state, which is basically poo-pooing the idea that Kellen was playing well. I don't know if that's a challenge to him. I don't know if that's trying to make a statement about something else. But I think the gauntlet has been laid down from his coach, and it's a question of, he's going to have the opportunity between this game and New England to get minutes. And the question is, how he uses it and if that carries into the playoffs.
And this Miami game showed that no matter what your position on the roster is, no matter where you've been throughout these last 8 months, there is going to be an opportunity for you, because I feel like years past.
This is just you pushing the Kellen Acosta left back thing again, isn't it?
Well, that would be great. But
this is Alex pushing the Kellen Acosta.
To be fair, it could still happen at some point. But like Justin Reynolds could have been in a similar position to guys in years past, like a Javi Casas or a Victor Becerra or a Misael Rodriguez, who maybe they got opportunities at one point in the season and then they're completely forgotten about after that, and they disappear into the second team and never even train with the first team again for the rest of the year. That's not happening under Berhalter, because he showed it with Justin Reynolds, and he's showing it hopefully soon with Kellen Acosta, that a guy who was completely out of favor, didn't play in MLS for 2 months at one point, when he did come back was getting 15-minute cameos in games that were dead, that he still hopefully has an opportunity to prove himself, because he's a very talented player. We all know what he's capable of. We all know the games he's had at the best moments of his career. And hopefully, fingers crossed for the Fire, that he can get to that level again in the playoffs, because he's done big things in the playoffs before with LAFC, with Dallas. Let's see if he can do it again.
Yes. So, Alan, we didn't mean to cut you off. Who's yours?
It's a very good question. Honestly, I agree with Alex. I do like seeing Guti off the bench. He's proven himself. I know we talked about, how Guti's probably feeling after, quote unquote, being demoted to the bench after this change in formation. But as much as we don't have that opportunity or that privilege in MLS to have like excelling bench players, I mean, it's something that has just worked out for Guti, and it's worked out for this team especially. So whether it's Kwame or even like Alex mentioned, if it's Acosta, I wouldn't mind either of them, starting off for like 60 something minutes, and then Guti coming on to really, do the same thing he did against Miami, driving the nail through this Toronto team. So one last thing in terms of this game, who are our X factors? Who do you got for winning? Now, I wanted to just start off by our usual commentator, our usual host, John, who has left his X factor in his prediction. He said that his X factor is Philip Zinkernagel, though he predicts a 2-1 Toronto win. So very interesting at that. Now, let's start off with Tim. Who's your X factor, and who you got?
I also
win?
had Zinkernagel. I should have maybe looked at John's first, but my argument is the same as it was for the Miami game, where it ended up with him not starting and, not getting the goal contribution. But he is 1 goal contribution away from tying Nikolić's record for the most ever by a Fire player. I think he can get it. And I think that there are very few games where he can't be a difference maker, and we've seen that throughout the season. It's been a couple games that have been a little bit quieter from him, and, time for him to show that form again. And I've got Chicago getting a 1-0 victory. It's been 0-0 or 1-1 for Toronto forever, so I'm giving them a half of that. But I still think the Fire are guaranteed to at least have about like a 500 winning record, like a 500 record. They've got right now 6 wins, 5 draws, and 5 losses, so they're not going to have a losing record at home, I guess is the easiest way to put it. But this would guarantee them a winning record at home. So 1-0.
For my X factors, I think the midfield's going to be very key in this one. And I'm honestly really just curious to see how Berhalter approaches this, given that after the first time he did the back three, we thought he won't do the back three again, will he? And then he did. And I thought, well, definitely not against Miami. And then he did. I'm very curious how it's going to work. But I think Acosta, who I mentioned before, if he plays, and Jay Davila, who's been excellent in the second half of the season, I think those two are going to be key in this one, especially given where Toronto's strengths are. I think it's going to be essential to see if Jay can, recover from a slow finish to his appearance against Miami and get back to where he was in the first 30 minutes of that game. And for prediction, I feel like every time we look at a game this year and think, well, the Fire have been winning games, but this game seems like one that wouldn't suit them, or this seems like a game they're not going to win. Feels like they have randomly won those games. So I'm going to say the Fire will win this one. And I'm going to say 3-1. It's tough. It's tough coming out of a weird week like this where they're only back in Chicago today, so they really only have 2 full days of prep. But it's just a weird game in the season now, especially given Toronto that are already eliminated. So I think the Fire will weirdly win this game and go into decision day sitting, I believe, in 7th place, which is exactly where you want to be.
And I mean, I agree, especially that the midfield is going to be a key difference maker, especially with Franco most likely being out. I said Guti, though I'm still staying along the lines of him coming off the bench. Simply being just like he was for the last few games, especially like he was for Miami, him just essentially, putting the final nail in the coffin. He'll, or if he is needed to call upon to either rescue, salvage, or just finish it off, he's proven that he is ready to prove his point, that he is someone that should be starting. And just like you mentioned, Alex, hopefully he can fit into that role that Franco's been doing in the future. I'm sort of went between you two. I said 2-1 Chicago Fire victory. So yeah, swinging. Before we finish off this wonderful monumentous pod, I have a little bit of a surprise announcement. So on Monday, I was talking with our incredible supporter liaison, Roberto, who, he's been doing a lot to help the supporter section, especially this season. And he's like, "Hey, I have a video for you. Someone from the team is sending you a message. So hopefully it plays through the soundboard. If not, Austin, you can insert the audio from this. But it's
Hey, what's up? Alan Omar Gonzalez here. Just want to thank you for being a supporter of the Fire for so long. And I want to personally invite you on behalf of myself and the team to sound the alarm on October 4th. You deserve it. We all love hearing the sax, especially me. And I can't wait to see you. See you soon.
Wow.
Congrats.
So hopefully that came through, but I'm going to be the one that's sounding the alarm on the final home game of the season at Soldier Field. My heart's racing just like how it was back then. I mean, just the fact that, I know it's fan appreciation night, so it makes sense, but just the fact that it's going to be me that is, because at first I thought I was like, oh, I'm going to be like the supporter that hands the axe to like the whatever Chicago celebrity or person is going to be there. And he's like, no, you're going to be the one that's breaking the glass and everything. I'm like, no shot. So, for those who will be at Soldier Field, you will see me doing that. So I'm super excited, genuinely. Like I'm buzzing.
Man.
I need it to be Saturday right now.
It will be before long from the day you're listening to this. Congratulations.
No, it will be. It will be a lot. It will be sooner for you guys listening to this. And yeah, hopefully I'll see as many of you guys out there as possible. But yeah, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this, again, really special episode. The first one where the Fire are in the playoffs. I'm excited for the future episodes where we'll be talking about the playoff games. But in the meanwhile, why don't you guys check out their website, meninred97.com, where you can check out, the 5 things we learned from the game, as well as other articles written by Tim, by Alex, by John, by our lovely writers. Check us out on the socials, wherever you are on social media, wherever you get your dopamine fix, especially when it comes to this club, this soccer team. Give us a like, give us a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you ingest your podcast. Subscribe, share, because genuinely, even those little blips and clicks do tell us a lot. And, maybe, tag us, maybe call us out, maybe be like, hey, Tim, I don't agree with that. Or Alex, I think that was pretty neat. Not to call out anyone.
But just to call out Tim.
Yeah. But just to call out you, Tim. But anyways, For Alex, for Tim, as well as for our personal MVP, Austin, who makes us sound beautiful, makes us look great, as well as for our usual co-hosts, John and DJ, I have been Alan, the Pull with the Goal. Come on, you men in red.